crazy story of Thorhild County that unfolded after Christmas? If you don't, you should know it, because it's a story of normal people fighting back, standing up, and putting their own government back in its place. Now, I'd like to know more about the story, but the county of Thorhild, Alberta just slapped me with a paywall. Now, I think I can climb over it with your help and your donations to rebelinvestigates.com. For those of you outside of Alberta, you have no idea what Thorhild County is, but it's a sparsely populated, enormous swath of land northeast of Edmonton, Alberta, the capital city, where about 3,000 people live in a space the size of a small European country in a couple of teeny, tiny, different towns, hamlets actually. The county decided to rewrite their land use bylaws, which seems kind of boring, and it is something that happens all the time, except this is where the story gets crazy, because in this largely rural county, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a whole slate of crazy regulations were being proposed in the new land use rules, including getting a permit to put up barbed wire, again, in a largely rural municipality. Regulations were also being imposed on chickens and your dog and how you place your deck on your house in this place where you don't even really have neighbors to annoy. Green Space Alliance Urban Planning, a company based out of India, was contracted by the county to come up with the new land use scheme, which included, quote, a retroactive nonconformity. So if your property wasn't in compliance with the new rules, when the new rules came in, you didn't get grandfathered in. You had to bring your property up to compliance or face consequences. Now, Western Standard did a really good job of breaking down the concerns of residents. So let's rely on the Western Standard's reporting here, done by Arthur C. Green. And I'll tell you why I have to rely on their reporting in a second. But these are the concerns of residents as documented by Western Standard. The proposed LUB, that's land use bylaw, also refers the reader to documents that don't exist or don't exist in the capacity that the land use bylaw suggests that they do. For example, our proposed land use bylaw directs the reader to the urban hen bylaw, though council voted against urban hens on January 14th, 2021, and there is no such document. Our proposed land use bylaw also directs us to the Animal Control Act for how to keep animals and livestock. However, our county's animal control bylaw is specific to dogs. We have concerns about including the strict limiting of food production. We are an agricultural county, the concerned residents said. The section on fencing restricts all barbed wire fencing, including in agricultural districts, by requiring permits for all barbed wire fences paired with the new retroactive nonconformity. This includes existing barbed wire fences too. Any enclosure, fence, or building of any size that houses chickens requires a permit on farms, acreages, and in the hamlets. Okay, so I think you get the problem here. An out-of-country green firm is contracted by this enormous, but I reiterate, sparsely populated Alberta County to rewrite the land use bylaws. And then all of a sudden the land use bylaws end up being subjective and outrageous, retroactive, and completely incompatible with the culture of rural Alberta. How did all this happen? Well, I'd like to know. Now, I'll tell you something else that's funny. When I went looking for the proposed land use bylaws, they aren't really on the website anymore. That's why I had to rely on the Western Standard's reporting. And the county, to their credit, has reverted back to the 2015 rules, which seem to be working just fine in the first place. Now, from what I understand, the councillors in Thorhild County are not crazy people. In fact, they did indeed ultimately listen to the outrage of the residents. But again, I reiterate, how did any of this happen? So I went looking for documents. I wanted to know how much that green urban planning multinational firm was paid to come up with a plan that ultimately went right in the garbage because it was absolutely insane. And I wanted to know what the residents were saying to their own government. But I also wanted to know what the government officials were saying to each other. Did they ever raise any alarm bells about how insane some of these proposed rules really were? So I filed for access to information for those records, and I thought it would be no big deal to get my hands on them because, I'll say it again, this is a municipality of just 3,000 people. And I think I'm exaggerating when I call it a municipality. It's a couple of hamlets across a chunk of land, again, the size of a small European country. Should have been no problem to get my hands on this stuff, except it is now. I've been slapped with not one, but two separate bills for documents. The first one for a little over $1,400 and another one for $700 for a grand total of $2,100 for documents. Again, in a place with just 3,000 people. I want to see the battle that the residents of this rural municipality waged against their own government and ultimately won. I want to be able to show other Canadians that they can fight back successfully. And I want to show other town councils that if they get any crazy ideas, this is exactly what's going to happen to them. Now, I know some people are trying to link what happened in Thorhild County to a smart city scheme or the World Economic Forum or a 15-minute cities plot. I don't have evidence of that. I want to see evidence of that if it indeed exists. I want to know the motivations here. Don't you? But I need those documents first. Can you help me? If you can, please make a donation to cover those filing fees at rebelinvestigates.com. And thank you to everybody who makes this important investigative work possible. We couldn't do any of this work without you. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. As you know, Rebel News takes absolutely no money from any level of government, and how could we ever hold them to account if we did? We rely on the support of viewers like you for everything that we do here, and in particular in this story to file for documents with Thorhild County. If you'd like to make a donation to offset my filing fees so I can hold the government to account, please consider making a donation at rebelinvestigates.com.